There comes a point when you realize the game hasn't changed. You have. The legs don't recover the same. The mistakes cost a little more. But to compete, it's still there. The love of the game of hockey is still there. You just have to adjust. This is Shift Change, staying in the game at 50 plus. Very few players can say they've shared a locker room with Wayne Gretzky, Mark Messier, Mario Lemieux, Jaromir Jagr, Ron Francis, and Bernie Nichols. Today's guest can. Craig Muni played 819 NHL games, won 3 Stanley Cups with the Edmonton Oilers, became part of the Buffalo hockey community, and later helped coach a championship women's professional team in Buffalo. Today we're talking about junior hockey, legendary teammates, and championship teams, and the trade that brought him to Buffalo. The growth of the women's game, and what it takes to build a lifetime in hockey. This is Shift Change, staying in the game at 50 plus. Hey everybody, welcome back to Shift Change. I'm your host, Rich Einesen. This show is about the people, stories, and relationships that keep us connected to hockey long after that final buzzer. Today's guest was selected 25th overall by the Toronto Maple Leafs in the 1980 draft. He went on to play 819 regular season NHL games, appear in 113 playoff games, and win 3 Stanley Cups with the Edmonton Oilers in 1987, 88, and 1990. Craig Muni, welcome to Shift Change. It's great to have you here. Okay, perfect. We're back today with Craig Muni. Craig, welcome to the show. How's things going, and what's been keeping you busy these days in Buffalo?
The weather's been nice. Weather-wise, we don't get that long to celebrate the summers here, so try to take advantage of it in the short summer season that we get here.
Yeah, we get 9 months of winter in Buffalo and 3 months waiting for winter.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's about
construction,
Yeah.
construction schedules on that too.
So I wanted to start off just talking about where you're from. I know you're from Toronto, but what part of Toronto, and where did hockey begin for you?
I think it's like many Toronto kids or Canadian kids or kids in general that have an interest in hockey. I grew up in kind of the Scarborough area and kind of took to hockey, just watching Hockey Night in Canada every Wednesday and Saturday evenings with the family. And then it kind of just blossomed from there. I had a chance to start playing hockey at a young age. Kind of worked the way up through, back then it was the MTHL, now it's the GTHL for the Greater Toronto Hockey League. And just kind of fortunate enough to keep advancing. But back then it was a little bit different than what it is now because you didn't really have a plan or someone to hold your hand and guide you through the process because it was kind of trial and error. And then you just kind of figure it out on your own with your parents.
Now, did your dad play hockey?
Well, my parents got divorced when I was young, so my stepdad played hockey when he was younger. He was actually one of my first coaches, and then I think he only coached me for a year, 2 years.
Okay.
Then he stepped aside, but he was a big mentor in my career.
What organization did you grow up playing in?
Started with first travel was the Toronto Olympics, which I don't think they're around anymore.
Right.
And that was this travel A. I think double A was was the highest at the time. And then from there, I went to the Toronto Kings for a number of years. After a couple of years there, my parents got married. We moved out to Mississauga.
Oh.
Also, sorry, from Toronto Kings went to the Royal York Rangers. And then during that frame, my parents got married at the time and we were moving out to Mississauga, so I wanted to play for the Mississauga Reps.
Oh, gotcha.
Unfortunately, Royal York wouldn't give me my release at the time, so the political turmoil was even back in those days as it is today for kids. So we moved out to Mississauga, and then out of the blue, my parents said, "We've arranged for you to go to play hockey at St. Mike's College." I kind of was a minor midget at the time, so I was 15 years old. And I kind of asked them, well, why St. Mike's and how is this going to work? So basically, my parents told Roy York, if we don't get our release, we're going to take you to court because of going to St. Mike's for school reasons. So at 15, I had to pull out of my high school in Mississauga to attend St. Mike's College for a year. And I played for the St. Michael Buzzards. Ended up being the best thing that ever happened, actually, when I look back at it now, because I played on the the midget team full time, the high school team full time, the junior B buzzards part time, and the juvenile team part time.
Oh,
And
wow.
as Toronto kids know, St. Mike's has their own arena, so we're on the ice pretty much every day, and it was the best thing that probably could happen for my young career at 15. 16, I ended up going out to Mississauga and played for Mississauga Reps.
Okay. All right. Were you always a defenseman?
Pretty much. I think I only recall playing center 1 year in house league when I was like 8 years old, 7, 8
Okay.
years old. And my first year of travel with the Olympics, I was always one of the bigger kids. So one of the coaches suggested I try playing defense and kind of stuck thereafter.
Okay. All right. At what point in that high school career did you get drafted in the OH?
Yeah, and again, we didn't really know much about the junior draft. Back then, it was the OHA, and my dad reminded me that we received a letter in the mail from the league saying if I were to be drafted, would I attend? Not knowing why wouldn't you? Because we weren't really looking into the college route at that time. Because if you were to make it the NHL back then, the route to go was through the junior hockey that simulates basically a pro schedule and the amount of times you're on the ice. So playing college hockey wasn't even an option or something that we even looked at. So yeah,
Wow.
we got the letter. We went to the draft, and it was at a hotel right by the airport. I can't remember the name of it. And then was drafted, I think, the 6th or 7th round by the Kingston Canadiens.
Yeah.
So oddly enough, I think they drafted 3 defensemen ahead of me in that. Rick Wilson was first pick. Mike Stubbers was the second pick, who I played with in St. Mike's and grew up with. Jim Aldred was a underage defenseman. And then actually Dan Wood, I think, was the next pick, who I played with also at St. Mike's. I don't think they had the next pick, so I was the following pick. So I was like the 4th defenseman picked and ended up making the Kingston Canadiens out of training camp.
Okay. And that was a good team. I mean, when I look at the statistics from that team, Scott Howson and Bernie Nichols were powerhouses at that point. I think Scott Howson's like the AHL CEO now, isn't he?
I think he is of the American Hockey League, I believe now.
Yeah. I think he just took over as the president or something.
Yeah. He's had a long career off the ice, probably longer than and a larger career off the ice than he did on the ice. And it was odd though that team in Kingston, because back in the day when you played junior hockey as a rookie, you didn't play a lot. You kind of watch and observe. But because they drafted 4 young defensemen, the only veterans on our team were Peter Dineen and Neil Bellin. And Peter got hurt early, and they ended up having no choice but to play us kids. So the good and the bad, again, is that of an opportunity that you had a chance to play. And going into that season, prior to that season, they just lowered the NHL draft to 19-year-old kids from 20-year-old kids.
That's right.
So that was everybody's mindset. You knew you couldn't be drafted. You were there to play, learn, hone your skills. And then halfway through the season, they lowered the draft year to 18 that year. Well, partway through the season, the scouts and agents came out of the woodwork, and now you're kind of the center of attention with people paying attention to who you are and what you do on the ice. So for our draft year for the NHL, I could do first year of the 18-year-old draft.
Yeah, I was looking at your stats in that first season. The one thing that jumped out is the 114 minutes in penalties. And that was your highest single season total through your whole career, professional and junior. I mean, it looked like you played on the edge right from the beginning. Was that something that you just went and did, or the coaches encouraged that?
I think it was just more my style. I was very fortunate. I had Jim Morrison as our coach, and again, a former NHLer, and he was instrumental in me kind of honing my skills and helping me learn and understand about the game. But he paired myself with Rick Wilson, who was the first round pick, who was a local boy from Kingston, who went in the 1980 draft. He went first round to St. Louis, I think 12th, somewhere around there. whatever
Okay.
pick. It was fairly early pick in the first round. Rick was a really good player both ends of the ice. Like he would play the power play, kill penalties in regular shift, but he was a physical player as I was, and we kind of set things up perfectly where if a player was coming down on Rick, he would take the boards away and force the guy to come through the middle of the ice. And knowing this, I was coming across the ice from my position to lay the guy out. And then I did the same thing. I would take the boards away, force the guy to come through the middle, and Rick would come through the middle of the ice to get the hit. And
Wow.
I can't tell you how many hits we got from that first year. So that kind of started my career with learning how to hit and coming across the ice and the timing of it.
Yeah.
So it was kind of that honing my skills for how it ended up being in the NHL, basically.
Yeah. But throughout your career, junior, and then into the pros, your penalty minutes came down. So do you think that was like more of a maturity, better positioning, or learning how to, how to make an impact as a defenseman without being so physical?
Nah, the physical part was always part of my game. I think
Yeah.
the one thing I remember my first year in Edmonton and Glenn Saylor saying, you don't have to always fight, but you have to show up. And I would always remember that. And I would always tell somebody who's starting their career, whether it's a junior or a college or just somewhere new or higher levels, you, you have to make yourself, you have to be accountable because if you're not accountable, word spreads through the league pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And then you just start getting picked on and that. So I think the
Yeah.
first year it was just more play my game and people challenge you and you kind of just go about your business.
Yeah.
And
And
then
when you look at, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, as time goes on, everybody back then, again, you had fighters and enforcers.
Right.
So that was more their job. And they're the ones that kind of looked after the guys in that department.
Yeah. So when you look at the defenseman today, is it easy to teach these guys the physical side of the game more than it is the skill set? Because in Buffalo, we look at a guy like Owen Power, and the poor guy just gets beat up in the media for not being physical, but he's extremely talented.
Yeah.
Offensively, he's a great defenseman. He just doesn't hit. Is that something that just you can't teach it?
I think it's hard to teach, especially when you get to that age and this level now.
Yeah.
To me, a good example of that was Richard Smellick, who I played with the Sabres.
Yep.
And he was a big kid, strong kid, and he reminds me a bit of Powers, where he can play both ends of the ice. And the fans used to get on Richard because he wasn't a physical defenseman. It wasn't in him to play that way, and it's either part of your personality and who
Yeah.
you are, not something you can teach. Because some kids just don't like the physical part of it, and
Yeah.
some relish with it.
Yeah, and Owen Power, I mean, I think he had a better season this year physically than he's had in the last few, but he's such a big part of that Sabres team. And, Buffalo
Yeah,
fans are super finicky. They want that hardworking physical defenseman. And
yeah.
I don't know that you're going to get it from him.
No, Buffalo's just a blue market town with the
Yeah,
Bills and with the Sabres, and they just want you to show up and put your hard hat on, go to
yeah,
work and work hard.
yeah,
Where Powers is a gifted player. He could skate, he could move the puck, he could do everything. I think the fans would be satisfied is if he, again, you don't have to fight, just show up and show a bit of your strength because he's not a weak kid. He's a big kid and he's strong.
yeah.
So as long as he just shows up and competes, the fans will be happy with his performance.
I want to ask you about Bernie Nichols because as a kid growing up, Gretzky was everything for me. But as a kid, I loved Bernie Nichols. And you got a chance to play with Bernie in junior hockey and then later on with the Oilers. What was Bernie like as a junior player? I mean, his stats were incredible, but what was he like as a player and a teammate?
Oh, Bernie was a great guy. So he was a year older than myself. So again, I hung around with him quite a bit on and off the ice in Kingston. So I got to know him very well. Very personal person, and anyone who has met him, even today when we do any alumni stuff, you can see how he is with the public and the people. And he's just such a down to earth guy, and still is, as he was back then. But a gifted goal scorer. I think his first year he was able to play junior. I think he got sent down to tier 2 junior hockey. He didn't make the
Oh,
Kings of Canadians his first year. So he ended up coming up, but he was just a gifted goal scorer.
yeah.
He wasn't one of the great skaters, but he knew how to put the puck in the net. He knew where to go to put the puck in the net, and you can't teach that either.
Yeah, and he had one of the greatest offensive seasons of his era, but do you think he's sometimes overlooked when people talk about the great scorers of the '80s?
Yeah, I think when they compare players or stats, it's not just a stat; it's a whole ball of everything. Whether it's All-Star games or made first team, second team All-Star, winning Stanley Cups, playing internationally, winning Olympics or gold medals. I think those are really where the comparables all are.
Yeah.
So Bernie probably falls short of those comparisons. But as far as an NHL goal scorer goes, he ranks up there with some of the greats.
Did he play on any of the Team Canada teams through the Canada Cups or any of that?
I don't recall if he did or not. Yeah, he may have, but I can't remember off the top of my head if he did or not.
Yeah. So then you're in Kingston, you get traded to Windsor. And during that 80 season, you go there. How did that trade come about? And like, what was your first reaction?
The team I went to in Windsor, they were actually pretty good, and Ernie Godden was probably the big name at the time. I think he scored 86 goals, which was a record at the time. I don't know if it still is.
I think it still is, yeah.
Yeah, but the trade came as a surprise. It was my first year. I had a good year in junior or in Kingston. I was drafted 25th overall to the Maple Leafs. I came back the second year. I came back when the Leafs made it back to junior. It was like a month later, so I kind of fell behind in school. Got back to Kingston late. Maybe Jim thought it was time that he could get something for me in a trade, and the trade happened. But I had no idea it was coming, and no one talked to you about it. It just kind of was your first, I guess, encounter what hockey is and what a trade is, and trying to figure it out and understand it.
Yeah.
Because at the time, you leave home when you're 16, 17 years old, and you live with a strange family in a strange city. You go to a school, you don't know anybody but the players on the team. And all of a sudden, when the trade happens, it's like you're starting all over again. You go into another city, live with another different family. I don't think I knew anybody on the Windsor team at the time. And then started in a different school. So it was a kind of a trying time to just try to figure all that out.
Yeah, that's crazy. And I had a conversation with Grant Ledgerd, and Grant talked about being traded in the NHL and how difficult it was. And as a young man, it hurt him for a while. I wanted to ask you about Ernie Godden real quick because he put together just an extraordinary. I think it was 87 goals. I think he had 153 points in 68 games. And I was looking, nobody's beat that since. He still holds that record.
Oh, good. Yeah.
And then I know he was also drafted in the third round by Toronto as well, but he only played 5 games in the NHL. So what was he like as a player and a teammate?
Ernie was a great guy. So again, that was my first time getting to know who Ernie was when I got traded to Windsor. And I still shake my head today on some of the goals and how he scored the goals. Like he could be spinning on his top of his head, doing a break dance, and somehow was able to put the puck in the net. It was like one of those magical seasons. So that was his last year, I think, junior at the time. And I remember we were playing Kitchener in the playoffs, and we got knocked out of the playoffs. And Ernie and I are standing at the blue line when they're doing 3 stars and some other stuff after the game. And I joked with Ernie because I was already drafted to the Leafs. And I just joked to him, and I leaned over and said, "Hey, Ern, I'll see you at Leaf camp in the fall," not knowing he was going to get drafted to the Leafs that draft year. And sure enough, he got drafted. And the Leafs farm team at the time was in Cincinnati. He went down to Cincinnati to play in the American Hockey League. I finished my last year junior, and then when I turned pro, when I got sent to the American League, Ernie and I ended up being roommates our first year there.
Oh, wow.
Like you talk about not playing a lot of games, Ernie wasn't a big player at all, but his heart was as big as anyone I've ever seen, and he would fight, hit, score. He would do basically everything and anything. Unfortunately, there was a game in Binghamton. I can't remember who it was he got in a fight with, and both of Ernie and the other guy, they kind of were ready to throw a haymaker, where they kind of really reached back to throw a punch, and you kind of knew whoever got hit first was going to get hit pretty bad. And of course, he already got hit first and shattered his nose and his face. And he kind of never was the same player after that.
Wow. And you always see these guys that they dominate junior hockey. And when you score 87 goals and 153 points in one season, everybody's going to assume you're going to the NHL and you're going to compete in scoring with Gretzky. But I don't think Ernie was a big guy, right? He was small.
No, he's small. Yeah, he might have been maybe 6 feet at best, 5'11".
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, so again, back in those days, so the big guys game, junior hockey was the
Yeah.
NHL. Like my draft year, players weren't even looked at if they were under 6 feet tall for the most part. It was back just after the Broad Street Bullies and the Big Bad Bruins, so everybody wanted size and strength.
It's crazy. It just makes you think about how timing is everything,
Oh yeah.
and you when their chance comes, you might be the greatest player, but the time's not right, and it may never come back again, right?
So I'm a firm believer in timing or an opportunity, but more importantly than the opportunity is you have to be ready for that opportunity. Because
Yeah.
as you said, it may never come back around and you may never get another chance. So it's always about being prepared and being ready for that one chance.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It's crazy.
when you speak of that, like some real good goal scorers again, junior goal scorers, Dan Curry, Sean Van Allen, and David Haas. I think they were way up there in scoring in junior hockey, and they were all owned by the Oilers.
Okay.
All three of them were forwards. I think two of them were centermen. And every time one of them got called up, I would sit down with them and like how you just get dejected. You get called up. You're playing they put you on the fourth line. You get little ice time. You're not going to score. You're not going to pick up any points, and they're just ejected after a game. So I'm trying to sit them down and let them know you put up a lot of points in junior. You can score. If you can score one league, you got an advantage as you move up in the ranks.
Right.
The unfortunate part is you're drafted to the Edmonton Oilers. And you're not going to beat out Wayne Gretzky and
No.
Mark Messier and Curry and Anderson for a spot. And remind them just keep playing hard. If you go down, play harder. And when you get an opportunity to get out of the organization, you have to jump at it.
Yeah.
And that will be your opportunity then. And they all end up leaving the Oilers at some point in time. And I think Sean Van Allen had the best career with the Senators. He started with Ottawa.
Yep.
And then David Haas and Dan Curry might have had the next best career. And then Haas was the third. But they were all gifted junior scorers at the same time, too.
So when we talk about Toronto, being a Toronto boy, you get drafted by your hometown Leafs, 25th overall. Do you remember that draft day?
Unfortunately, yeah. So we weren't sure if we were going to go to the draft or not. And it was always at the iconic Montreal Forum.
Yeah.
And then my agent said, you have to go. And we're not sure why he said, I have to go. So he said, Philadelphia Flyers. Back then, there's only 21 teams. The Flyers had the last pick of the first round, the 21st pick. So Rick Curran was my agent, Rick Curran and Bill Waters. And Rick said, you have to go. The Flyers said, if you're available for the 21st pick, they're taking you. So we said, okay, we'll go there. We have to be there if I'm going to get picked in the first round. So Flyers get up for the 21st pick, and I think was it Bobby Clark? I forgot who it was now. They thanked the city of Montreal, the Montreal Canadiens, for hosting the draft. Flyers are proud to select from the Kingston Canadiens. So I'm thinking this is it. Defenseman. Now I'm pushing myself up off the seat to
Yeah.
start getting up to go
Yeah.
down to meet the brass. And they say Mike Stothers. And I kind of went blank. And I turned to my parents. I said, who did they just say? They told me. So now I'm sitting in my seat. And all I could think about was, okay, how long do I have to sit here? And where am I going to go? And
Right.
the Leafs had the 25th pick, 4 picks later. And I was in my own mind, and I didn't even hear my name called. And
Wow.
my parents are jumping up and down and screaming and telling me I got to get down to the floor and meet everybody. And it was like, okay, it wasn't as planned, but
Yeah.
it worked out.
I was just going to say, what did it mean to your family? I mean, that's the Leafs,
Oh, it
right?
was,
Yeah,
yeah. You grew up in Toronto, and no matter where the Maple Leafs play or the Montreal Canadiens play, or any of the original six for that matter, there's such a huge following across Canada into the U.S., and the Maple Leafs are the biggest one of them all. So it was a dream come true to be drafted by your hometown, the team that you grew up as a kid watching Hockey Night in Canada every Wednesday and every Saturday. So
right.
it was a dream come true to be drafted by the Leafs.
So did you feel immediate pressure like, oh, now I got to play for the Leafs and everybody I know is going to be watching me?
No, I never looked at it that way. Even throughout my whole career, I never looked at it or felt that like there was pressure or put pressure on myself.
Yeah.
It was almost the reaction, and you always, if you're in that dressing room, like for a game seven, no matter at what level, a lot of times the guys or the coaches will always just say, "It's just another game. It's
Yep.
just another game. Just go
Right.
out there and play." And it's one thing to say it, and then it's another thing to what's going through your mind and all that. And the anticipation of the game seven and the excitement of it, it's there as you're preparing and going through warm up. But once you have that first shift and you get out there, it's like you just put everything back into perspective. That was just another game, and you're just
You go to
playing the
work,
game.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I never looked at pressure that way, or for playing for the Maple Leafs or not playing for the Maple Leafs or being drafted there. It was like,
Yeah.
again, as I look back on my career, being drafted is just an opportunity.
Right.
And if you are drafted, you have more opportunity than a player maybe who was not drafted. But everybody has different ways to get to the end goal. And just because you weren't drafted doesn't mean your career and your dream ends there.
That's right. So you got 19 games with Toronto over those few seasons. Was it difficult to try and establish yourself with such limited opportunities? And did that teach you a lot about patience and perseverance? Because that team, now everybody knows, was run by Ballard. There was a lot of dysfunction, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to tell a quick story. So my first training camp with the Leafs, they break you up into different squads, and I just happened to be sitting on the bench with Daryl Sittler, who again was a big hero of mine, and I don't know him, and he's just chit chat, and then this is while the scrimmage was going on, and he said one thing to me that I remembered for the rest of my life and my whole career, and he said, "You're drafted high by the Leafs for a reason, and the best thing you can do is go out there and play your game. Don't try to do something that you don't normally do. If you're not a goal scorer, or if you're not a fighter, or if you're not a hitter, then don't do those things. Just do
Right.
what got you down." And I always remember that this kind of that mentality, just stay in your lane, do your job, and everyone will look after itself because you can't do someone else's job. Just you do your job to the best of your ability.
I know eventually he ripped the C off and he wanted out of there.
Yeah.
Him and
Yeah.
Ballard weren't getting along.
Yeah, I think that was after. But even what he said, it was held true to the time I went out to Edmonton because, again, you got Gretzky and Messier and Anderson and Curry and Tikkanen and goal scorers coming out of everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like, and that was one of the conversations always in the dressing room is everybody's got a job, everyone's got a role. All you have to do is that job and that role to the
Yeah.
best of your ability.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it was the same thing Daryl said many, many years ago when I was 18 years old. Yeah.
We're from Fort Erie and my dad's from Fort Erie. So my dad was a Leaf fan, but I grew up in Buffalo. So I was always a Gilbert Perreault and
Yeah.
Gretzky and Sabres, but my dad loved Boreas Salming. And you had an opportunity to play on a team with Boreas Salming. Did you get to
Well,
share a blue line with him?
no, I never played with him, but as you said, he was a huge, huge, huge idol of mine. He was as smooth as a player as you ever saw, as nice of a guy you'll ever meet. He was just so smooth of a skater. And it's like if he lost the puck, didn't have the puck, he was just able to always get the puck back. He was able to control a game and the pace of a game by his skills and his abilities. And I always admired just watching him and how easy he made the game look. It wasn't my game or how I played,
Right.
but I appreciated so much what he does. And it's like being in Buffalo here and having opportunity to see the Sabres play quite often here. Darlene in Buffalo reminds me a lot of Boria. Again, how great of a skater is and how great his hands are for controlling the puck and his ability to control the pace of a game. So I was so happy for him last year when he finally got nominated top 3 for the Norris.
Yeah.
In my mind, it was a long time coming, and kudos to him for doing that.
Your time came to an end with Toronto, and was Edmonton a free agent signing?
It was. So back then they had a contract called it was like a termination contract, basically. So after my 4 years with Maple Leafs, so my last year playing with the Leafs, I was on this termination contract, and I was having a good year. So I got called up to the Leafs probably about with a month left in the season. And Claire Alexander was the assistant coach who was my head coach in St. Catharines the year before. So after practice, Claire called me in and said, "Munes, the Leafs are happy with your season and they want to sign you to a new contract now." So I told Claire, I said, "Claire, honestly, there's a month left in the season, and they're right. I am having a good year. My agent told me there's a number of teams who are interested in talking to me come July 1st. So I said to Claire, I said, I can't sign anything right now, but I'd be happy to listen to what they have to offer come July 1st with the other offers. So we left it at that, went back to the hotel, came back to the rink the next day for practice, and got sent back to St. Catharines after practice and spent the rest of the year there.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
and there was a rumor at the time, John Brophy and Gary Labriviere were going to be the next head coach and assistant coach with Toronto. And Gary was my defense partner in St. Catharines, who, again, was a huge mentor in my career, who formerly played for the Oilers before venturing down into St. Catharines. So I kind of had to weigh that option too. Will they have enough power to give me an opportunity or not? And it came down to the back of my mind that they wouldn't.
Yeah.
So even if I backtrack to my draft year, I was drafted by Punch Imlach. He was the general manager in 1980.
Okay.
My first training camp, he had a heart attack, and he never came back to his position with the Maple Leafs. So Jerry McNamara took over as an intern and slowly became the general manager. And you could see his draft picks were getting the opportunity, and I felt I wasn't. And then the year they were going to make a big change and have all these young guys have an opportunity to make the team. So that would have been 82, 81, I think it was. So I went to training camp in Windsor and I blew my knee. So I showed up at training camp in a cast and crutches. And that year, Jim Benning, Fred Boimstruck, and Bob McGill all made the Maple Leafs as promised. They were going to give the kids an opportunity, and I didn't get an opportunity because I was out of hockey for.
Yeah.
I never came back till around December.
Right.
So that was my one opportunity to have a chance to play, and never got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyways, I played out that termination contract, and there was about 6 or 8 teams that showed interest, and the only thing I asked of all those teams is I wanted to play half the exhibition games. That was the only guarantee I wanted. I didn't care about the money. I didn't care about anything because I never felt I got a shake in Toronto because I think I've maybe played 2 exhibition games at the most. And back then, everybody played 10 or 12 games for exhibition games.
Yeah.
So we end up meeting with Glenn Sather in the hotel when the NHL awards were in Toronto all the time. And Glenn said, "I can't put it in writing, but you have my word, you have my handshake. You'll play half the exhibition games if I sign." So I took them to heart. I looked at the Oilers roster, and that year they just lost to Calgary in the playoffs on that Steve Smith hitting Grant Fuhr in the back of the skate and going in when they lost. So they won 2 cups. They're the best team in the league. I looked at their defense and thinking if they're ever going to make a change on that roster for the defense, it's now.
Yeah.
And when I say old for hockey was 30, 31. And they had Lee Fogelin, Don Jackson, Randy Gregg, and Charlie Huddy, who were the old guards at the time.
Yeah.
And Larry Melnick was the first call-up to the Leafs, who played in the American League, and Halifax was their farm team. So I figured with all that information and worst case scenarios, if I don't make the team and I go to Halifax and I become the new Melnick and get called up frequently to the best team in the league, I can parlay that into another contract somewhere else.
Right.
Except for when I went to training camp, I made the team out of training camp, and Slats let me play half the exhibition game.
Perfect.
So in fact, we were on a road trip somewhere, and he asked me if I ever played right defense. And I lied through my teeth. I said many times before, it's just looking at things on the opposite side.
Right.
So he put me with Kevin Lowe to test it out, who Lee Fogelin was his longtime partner for years. Things clicked and worked to the point where, actually, before training camp started, Randy Gregg retired, which ended up being temporarily, but he retired before camp started. We're in the dressing room for an exhibition game, and we just came off the ice for a warm-up, and they called Don Jackson into the coach's room. And before the game even started, he got traded to Minnesota.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So two of the four guys are now gone.
Yeah.
So Fogie and Huddy were still there. I'm now basically playing with Fogie's partner, and basically took his job. So
Yeah.
Fogie and Huddy were the odd ones out, kind of sitting. And then halfway through this, maybe not even halfway, earlier, they traded Fogie to Buffalo. And at that time, you had to play 40 games to get the security package they were calling for the pension.
Yeah.
So because he wasn't playing, they traded him to Buffalo so he could get his 40 games in that particular season.
Yeah.
So then Randy Gregg came back out of retirement. So I played with Randy and Charlie for the 7 years I was there. But again,
Yeah.
we talked about earlier, opportunity and being ready for that opportunity. And
Yeah.
that was probably the best shape I was ever in, going to a training camp.
And you made the right pick with a handshake.
Yeah.
You made the right
Yeah.
pick, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? People can say whatever they want about coaches or a general manager, and particularly I'm referring to Glenn Sather, and I'll be forever grateful because he gave me an opportunity.
Right.
And I'm sure he never even knew who I was or saw me play, because I heard it was actually Larry Kish, who was the head coach for Halifax, of the farm team in the American League, was the one that recommended me to Slats.
Yeah, and I think Craig, you've coached, and you've probably coached some of the youth in Buffalo. 80% of the guys you coach are going to like you and 20 aren't. It's just the way it is. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, you get to Edmonton, there's Gretzky and Messier and Curry and Anderson and Coffey and Fuhrer and Lowe and Huddy, and Semenko's there later in his career there. It had to be like, holy cow. Or is it just guys on a team?
I never looked at it that way. You know how good they were, because they've already won 2 cups in 2 years prior to just losing that one, and you knew they were just the new kids on the block, and how good they were.
Yeah.
I honestly never looked at it that way. I was there for one reason, and one reason only, to make the team. And so during training camp and during the scrimmages, again, I knew Coffey from playing against him and skating with him in the summer. He was probably the one I knew the most. So early in some of the scrimmages in the first couple of days, Koff and Mike Krushelinski, who I didn't know, they both came up to me at different times, said, you got to take it easy out here. You can't be blocking shots and hitting guys. You're going to kill somebody out here.
Yeah.
And I said to both of them, I said, yeah, but you don't understand. If I don't do it here, I'm not seeing an exhibition game.
Yeah.
And they skated away. But in my mind, I had to prove that I deserved the exhibition games. I wasn't just going to rely on Slats telling me he was going to give me half the exhibition games. I was going to earn it one way or the other.
Yeah.
And then this is kind of, I guess, the rest was history. We played half the exhibition games. Gretzky, on the way home from a long road trip during the preseason, he came over to me at the airport, And he told me that I made the team, and Slash wants to see me the next morning back in Edmonton in his office. So it was Wayne was the one that gave me the great news.
Yeah, I mean, that's something you'll never forget, eh?
Never, no, no.
Wow.
He was such a gentleman, and he offered, like, again, you're new to the team, and I was still living in a hotel, and the Canadian Thanksgiving was coming up, and he invited us, my wife at the time, and I over for Thanksgiving. Offered me one of his cars to drive around till I can find a car and a house and get settled and all that.
Wow. When you look at those teams, Craig, and obviously there's so many Hall of Famers on there, but was there a teammate that you believe deserved more credit for what they contributed to that dynasty? Because the names get all the popularity, they get all the headlines, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. There's so many Hall of Famers on that team, and keywords a team, and it's like I mentioned before, it must have been ingrained in them. And again, I'm a firm believer you have to learn how to win. It just doesn't happen overnight. And sometimes you
Right.
have to lose or face adversity. And some of the Oilers will tell you stories when they first played the Islanders and lost to them, which was the Oilers' first Stanley Cup appearance. And I've heard Gretzky tell it even on TV shows that he does. And they walked by the dressing room of the Islanders, and they were an older team at the time. And as much as they're celebrating, they've got ice bags all over their shoulders and their back and their
Yeah.
knees. And the Oilers at the time, we were just a bunch of kids that just were a great team. But
Yeah.
it took just a great team to know how to win. And it's the sacrifices you have to do, and how much are you willing to sacrifice and give up to get to that podium.
Yeah, because you hear people ask, like, well, what made the Oilers different than every other team in the league? And obviously they had so much talent, but as you see in other sports and football, and even and the Rangers have proved it for years, you can put all the best players together on a team and they're not going to win.
No.
That team did, and I don't know if it was something special inside the locker room. Is that what made them different?
Yeah. So I ended up playing 16 years of pro hockey, and that team was different than any other team I ever played on. And when
Okay.
I say that, I mean the dressing room. It was, and again, we didn't charter at the time. We flew commercial. So we spent more time with the guys than we did your own family. The guys would go to war for each other. The guys would protect each other. One man's in, five guys are in, and there was no questions asked. It was just everybody did everything as a team, whether it was on the ice, off the ice. And when I say everybody had a job and a role to do, and that was the case.
Yeah.
Like we had, like you said, Dave Semenko, Marty McSorley, Kevin McClellan. So we had the fighters, we had the power forwards, and Krushelinski and Messier, the goal scorers, defensive defensemen, guys who would hit, kill penalties, block shots. So everybody had a job, and everybody knew
Right.
what their job was.
Right.
And in my years with Kevin as my partner, I was in Edmonton for 7 years. So I think I had him for about 6 years till the last year he left. And he would even remind me that our job was to shut down the other team's top forwards. Don't let them score, kill penalties, play physical in front of the net, hit bodies and punish bodies. And that was my forte. That's what I did.
Yeah. And a lot of people talk about Gretzky, and of course he got all the big headlines, but Messier obviously went on to take that team on to another cup after Gretzky left. What was the difference between Mark and Wayne when you look at personalities and leadership?
They both really led by example. Wayne was a lot more a quiet individual, where Messi was a little bit more vocal. Mess just had a presence about him that you kind of followed him because he led you into the fire. Where Gretzky was such a great player and skilled player, you followed them for those reasons. So they kind of led differently, but the goal was always the same.
Yeah.
So it just happened to be, well, first of all, no one would ever thought Wayne would ever be great. And then ironically, that next season we played LA in the first round, and we're playing game 7 in LA, and they beat us, knock us out of the playoffs,
Yeah.
which was the '89 year. And then I think after that, everybody just kind of wrote us off that we'll never win again. And if I recall or seeing something, I think our season was just okay. It was pretty good. Nothing dominating. But then Slats made that trade with Detroit where we picked up Klima, Adam Graves, and Joe Murphy. And we already picked up Jell in the Gretzky trade. And that Detroit trade kind of sparked the team and injected some life into it. And we actually went into the playoffs, played Winnipeg in the first round, and we were down 3-1. And we ended up coming back, winning the series in 7. And the rest of the playoffs, we pretty much walked through it pretty, not easily, but we didn't have a lot of confrontation to get to the finals and win it. And I think it was the conference final. We were going to Chicago. I can't remember if it was game 5 or game 6. They told us to pack clothes for a longer trip because if we won, we were heading right to Boston, not coming home. And Messier, one of those famous quotes, basically, I don't think he said it out publicly, but you knew he was on a mission, and he pretty much single-handedly won that game on his own.
Yeah.
To win the series and go on to Boston for the finals.
Yeah. He was incredible.
Yeah.
When I was just watching a documentary on YouTube or something about Wayne's first game back in Edmonton, and I think it was in like the first week of that season, and how much media there was around it and how everybody was being asked what it was going to be like to play against Wayne. And I think they even asked Mark, and they were asking Kevin Lowe about it. And they said, look, we're all thinking about it, but as soon as the puck drops, he's just another player. Is that how you looked at it going back against Wayne?
Yeah, you have to, because you could easily get starstruck watching him and just in awe because he was such a great player. So like people would ask me what it was like to play with Wayne, and I played with Mario the 1 year I played Pittsburgh. But Wayne always set up shop behind the net, where he would gain the blue line and circle back, and all he does is creating time and space.
Yeah.
So if Wayne did the circle at the blue line, and me as a defensive defenseman, usually you go to a certain point on the top of the circle, the hash marks. If you don't get the puck, you see the puck anywhere near you, just circle back to your position. Wayne was the only player I've ever played with where you just go to the net and you keep your stick on the ice.
Yeah.
And I can't even see him through the crowd. And somehow, some way, the puck just ended up on your stick.
Yeah.
It was like
crazy.
It was like uncanny on how he did it.
Yeah.
And he was the only player I only ever did it that for, where I would just keep going to the net. But and then with Mario, he was such a big, strong individual. He would rather attack one-on-one and beat you with his speed and his skill and his strength. Right. Where Wayne wasn't built that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you also were part of that famous documentary, The Boys on the Bus, and that covered the 85, 86, 86, 87 season, and then leading up to the 87 Stanley Cup. What was it like having cameras around you guys all the time? Because at that time, access like that was rare. I mean, we see everything now with NHL. We see Connor McDavid yelling in the locker room in the Stanley Cup final. Like that, you would never see that back then.
Yeah. Yeah, we weren't sure what to expect, and we knew all the guys that were going to be there and the production crew and all that. So it was like everyone was kind of friends with them. So it wasn't like you got a bunch of strangers in the dressing room or on the bus or the planes, or the only thing different was maybe a camera being somewhere around or at your face. But when you play professional sports, a camera's always in your face. So it wasn't something that was out of the ordinary. Luckily for me, I wasn't the star, and it was my first year there, so I didn't get a lot of TV time anyway. So
yeah, a lot of background, right?
yeah. Try to jump into the scene, and
yeah, exactly. That what struck me the most. My wife and I were watching it. It was the 80s style music that they played on it. It was like the movie Youngblood.
Yeah.
A lot of slow motion, right?
Yeah, but because practices, they've had guys on skates, and guys would skate beside you or behind you with a camera down low and all these different angles and that. So it was kind of cool just to watch and see and be part of it, really.
Yeah, yeah. I want to ask you real quick about the Stanley Cups. So take me back to that first Stanley Cup in '87. What do you remember the most when, and then that final horn goes off? And when did you have a time to sit back and reflect about all the crap you've gone through with the Leafs and the Kingston trade? And take me back to that first cup.
I'll go back to prior to that. So the conference final we played Winnipeg, and I got hit from behind and I bruised a kidney, but it was pretty bad. So I missed the whole next series against Detroit, which was the conference final, and I missed the first two games of the finals. So it was my first year in Edmonton, and I started thinking, am I even going to get back into the lineup? And so luckily I did, and I got back in game three and through seven for the finals. But the one thing that stands out is we were up, I think it was 3-1. And then the next game we're up, the score was 3-1 against Philly, and they came back and won. The next game, game six, we're up 3-1. They came back and won. So now they forced game seven back in Edmonton. It's a 2-1 game with about 5 minutes, I think it was, left. And then outside the blue line or just inside the blue line, that went through Hextall's legs. And now we're up 3-1. What the difference was, I think there was only 4 or 5 minutes left in the game. And being new to all this, I'm jumping up and down on the bench when that third goal went in. I think there's no way we're going to lose. There's no way they can come back this late in the game. And then all of a sudden I'm looking up and down the bench and no one's celebrating like I am. It's like,
Oh boy, okay.
they're still focused in the game and their mindset is still there. And it's like, holy shit. It's like, I guess I can't act like a little kid in school jumping up and down for recess.
Yeah.
So then when we won the game, it was just a big relief, but at the same time, you can't believe it happened.
Yeah.
And so I always tell people, because people will ask, what was it like to hold the Stanley Cup and lift it over your head? And I would tell people, honestly, I had two thoughts in my head at that time. One was, don't be the first to drop it.
Right.
And second was, don't trip on one of the TV cables on the ice and trip.
Yeah.
And that was the only two things I was concentrating on, other than when you lift it over your head. It's like, man, this is a little heavier than I thought, because everyone just whips it up there like it weighs nothing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. 35 pounds, right?
Yeah. It was like, I guess there's a little bit of weight to this thing.
And what was crazy about then, the fans and everybody would jump on the ice. You guys had no room out there, right? Like not today. No. It's a big production.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? And I like how we did it back in our day, where the team had the cup and you skated around the whole ice.
Yes.
Where versus now, where they stay in one spot at center ice. A guy gets the cup and he skates out 2 strides, 3 strides, and comes back, hands to the next guy. Today just seems more orchestrated, less formal than the team all moving together and handing off the cup as you move around.
And if you go back even further, being a Buffalo kid, when the Sabres lost in '75 to the Flyers, they handed the cup to Bobby Clarke. He took it, skated off the ice with it.
Yeah, because it was probably in Buffalo.
It was in Buffalo, so they didn't skate it around or anything. So, but I was going to tell you, I have a buddy of mine, Lindsey Carson. He skates with us down in Arizona, and he is not a fan of the Oilers because he played on those two Flyer teams.
I was going to say, you mean today or that?
Yeah, that pretty much for life. He said he got 2 opportunities to win the cup, and both times he played the Oilers. So,
see, I played in 3 finals and I won 3 of them.
Yeah, I mean the percentages are great for you. So, and one thing I wanted to ask you, when you look at a Stanley Cup ring today versus your rings look like high school rings, eh?
Yeah, they do. They're a lot smaller than they are today. So in Buffalo, bowling is a big popular sport here in Buffalo. Yeah. So I was going through Tim Hortons one time and I happened to have a ring on. So when I handed the girl the money or went to grab my coffee, she noticed the ring and she said, "Oh, is that a 300 ring?" And if you know bowling, they used to give out rings if you score a perfect 300.
Right.
So I said, not quite. She said, oh, is it a school ring? I said, no, not quite. So she asked what it was. So I told her. So
Yeah, they're almost like a trophy now, right? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So you end up in Chicago after your years in Edmonton, but you get traded to Buffalo. They send Keith Carney off to the Blackhawks, and you go to Buffalo. What was your reaction to that trade to Buffalo? Because that's where you live now and you never left. Did you want to
yeah,
go to Buffalo?
it's not so much I wanted to go to Buffalo as much as as I wanted to get out of Chicago.
Okay,
So when I got traded from Edmonton to Chicago, which was fine, but I didn't report right away. And the reason I didn't report was back in the day, if you played for a Canadian team, you were paid in Canadian money.
that's right.
And if you played in the U.S. city, you were paid American money. So coming from Edmonton when my contract was signed, I go to Chicago, I make American money.
Yep.
But if I get traded back to Canada, I go back to Canadian money. So I didn't report until Chicago would re-sign my contract. I didn't want to renegotiate it. I didn't want to do any of that. I just wanted to have a contract signed in Chicago. So if they ever traded me or somebody ever traded me back to Canada, I was making American money.
Right. Okay.
So I don't think they took too kindly to it, but I had to protect myself
Yep.
first and foremost. So I ended up reporting, finished the season in Chicago. When we came back, they brought in a couple of defensemen. So I kind of heard inklings that they were making a few changes. And the coaches at the time in Chicago were the total opposite of the coaches that we had in Edmonton, and the
Yeah.
team atmosphere was different. So I told my agent basically I wanted to get out of here, find a trade. And then Muckler was with Buffalo at the time, who I had in Edmonton, and I heard a young defenseman that was supposed to make the team wasn't panning out. So that's when Muckler came to scout me and made the trade to bring me to Buffalo.
What were your first impressions of that Sabres organization in the city? Because I think Jerry Meehan was probably the general manager at the time, and they had a really good team. I mean, I think LaFontaine, Mogilny, Howard Chuck. I mean, it was becoming Edmonton East because I think Grant
Yeah,
Fuhr was there, right? Charlie Huddy was there
Charlie,
at the
Craig
time.
Simpson, Dave Hannon.
Simpson was there. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, we had a real good team over the years here in Buffalo. Unfortunately, we never were able to do anything with it. But Jersey was a good team. We ran into them where we played game six, a 6 period game.
yep.
So there's some good teams even back then. So just because you have a good team doesn't mean that you're going to win anything.
That's right. Yeah, and it's funny because back then, when you look at Buffalo the last 14 years, and the whole palm trees comment with
Yeah,
the Sabres,
yeah,
taxes and palm trees. Nobody would come to Buffalo over the last 14 years. But back when you played, Dale Howardchuck came, Grant Fuhr came. Players would come to Buffalo.
it's less about where you go, as long as you have a good team
Yeah.
and a good organization and an opportunity to win. And actually, when I got traded to Buffalo, and the only time in my career ever that I got a letter in the mail with the Buffalo Sabre return kind of logo on it.
Yeah.
So open it up. It was a handwritten note from the Knox family,
Okay.
welcome me and my family to Buffalo. And it was the only time I've ever received something like that that made you feel special, that you want to take the time to write a handwritten letter to send
Wow.
you to welcome to the city and your organization.
Yeah.
And it goes a long ways. It's sometimes it's just the little things that makes a player or a person feel better
Yeah.
to give more. And it's
Yeah.
not always just about the money.
Yeah. And I've heard that about the Knoxes. And that's a lot of the reason people came to play in Buffalo because the Knox family was just so nice.
Yeah.
So you got to play in the old odd.
Yeah. Yeah.
My wife and I, when we were in Buffalo, we went down to the arena and we walked over to where the big hole in the ground is still there from the odd. And
Yeah.
I played there, and I remember the boards were really short, and I'm a big guy. I'm 6'5". The boards were really short for a tall guy, but the way they moved in that arena, the boards wobbled back and forth when you hit them. It was crazy.
Yeah. Well, it was great because if you threw a hit, it didn't even have to be a big hit, like you said. But the whole boards and the glass would all just move and wave around.
Fans loved it.
And the fans, yeah, they loved it. And the yard was a small ice surface, so you couldn't avoid the contact out there. You
Yeah.
either loved the hit or you didn't mind getting hit. But
Yeah.
either way, you're gonna have contact out there.
Yeah. So how quickly did you understand what the Sabres meant to that community?
Well, right away, I was fortunate that I knew players I played with that were here, so they kind of helped fill you in on the organization, the city. Everybody lived in East Amherst at the time, so that's where we end up living at the time as well. But the the city here and the people here, they're blue collar, hardworking people, and as we stated at the beginning of this, that's just how they. If you did that on the ice or on the football field, it goes a long ways, and people remember you for that. It's not, and I'm not the Gretzky or the Howard Chucks and the goal scorer, but even today, they remember who you are because of how you played and what you did and how you gave up your body to play the game.
Yeah. Is there a favorite odd story? I know you mentioned the 6-period game. That's the Dave Hannon goal, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Is there
That was probably
one?
the biggest one because actually Patty was hurt at the time and it was game 6 and it was funny because when Dom was getting inducted into the Hall of Fame, they play a special game of those players that are going into the Hall.
Yeah.
So I got these calls and texts, and people were telling me that game was on TV. That was the game they were playing for Dom. So I started watching at the beginning, and I'd never really seen it on TV because you're there. And I kind of got a little chuckle because they're talking about Martin Brodeur and Dom Hasek as two unknown playoff goalies and
Yeah.
who can play, who's going to crack under the pressure. And then you fast forward, both end up being two of the greatest goalies ever in the Hall of Fame,
That's
Stanley
right.
Cups. But at the time, nobody knew. And then that game just stood out because of the length of it was my second time ever going into one of those long games.
It's crazy.
And those games always stand out because of the length of time and how you feel going through it.
Yeah, it's crazy. And so when you look at the Buffalo hockey community, players live there that never even played there. You look at guys like Marcel Dion. I know he's not there anymore, but like
Yeah,
big name players would come and live in Buffalo. Harry Neal picked Buffalo to live the
yeah,
rest of his
yeah.
days.
Daryl Sittler was here for a
Sittler,
number of years.
Lestade. Yeah, and all these guys come and I don't know if it's the proximity to Toronto, but why did you guys stay in Buffalo?
Well, I left Buffalo, but the reason I really came back was the people here. How nice the people are that you meet outside of the game. The school systems are second to none from the ones I've seen from the cities I was in. The cost of living here is really good, and the proximity to the border and able to see your family in Toronto.
Yeah.
So they were all the deciding factors of why, when I retired, to come back to Buffalo because you always do have an opportunity or a choice to retire in whatever city you want. And,
Yeah.
and people always say, well, again, why Buffalo? And those are some of the reasons that
Yeah.
stand out.
It's funny, my buddy Brett Callahan, who played for Edmonton and he
Yeah.
assisted on Wayne's first goal. He skates with us down in Arizona as well. And he lives in Vancouver, but he skates with the Vancouver alumni.
Yeah.
Are you involved with the Sabres alumni or did you become more involved with the Sabres alumni?
Yeah, I sit on the board and the golf committee. We
Okay.
skate once a week, usually on Thursday, and
Okay.
that skate's been going on since even before my time
Yeah.
when I retired. So yeah, funny story about that skate. So there's a local real estate guy that was one of the goalies at the time. So my first time I retired and I walked into the dressing room, and his name is Howard Saperston.
Yeah. Howie
Just short
Shepperson.
little,
Yep.
yeah, short little guy. And so
Yeah.
you know, and he got the squeaky little voice. So I walk into the dressing room and there's guys in their seats and some empty seats. And again, so used to having your own stall, you know where to go. So I walk in and all of a sudden out of the corner of my ear, I hear the squeaky little voice yelling, "Hey, Rook, can't sit there. Go sit over there." And I'm looking around and I see little Howard over there. It's like, who the F? are you? And then it dawned on me what he said. And it was like, shit, he's right. I am a rookie here.
Yeah, I think Howie.
Starting all over again.
Yeah, after hockey. Yeah, I think Howie
Yeah.
might have been a minority owner of the Sabres early in
Yeah.
Sabres
Yeah.
history.
His family started the Seneca or the bus line, the junior A program here.
Yes, that's right.
So the
Yeah,
early days, his family was heavily involved with the hockey programs in the
that's
Buffalo
right.
area. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I don't have much more for you. I wanted to ask you about Yarmer Yager. You got to spend a season with Yager. Was he kind of off the charts a little bit then, or was he kind of subdued in the early years?
Nah, couple of things that really stand out besides his ability and that. But at the time in our era, if you rode the bike after a game, during a game, whenever, it's usually because you didn't play or you didn't play a lot. So
Yeah,
you kept up the staying in shape and your heel and your legs and all that. So at the time, now they do basically a workout after to get the lactic acid out of their legs, and that started
yeah,
towards the end of my career. Jagger was the only guy I've ever seen during that time frame where after a game he'd be in the gym and he's doing squats, and I'm thinking, like, again, it was my second last year, so I was 35 years old with beat
okay,
up
yeah,
knees and beat up body, and all I want to do is put ice on my knees and my shoulders. Everything is so sore and aching, and there's this young guy who's one of the stars of the NHL, and he's in there pounding weights and doing squats, and
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like it's like because he wasn't really huge upper body, but his legs were like tree trunks.
yeah. And I think that's what the '80s Europeans were all about. They were about their lower body, and the North
Yeah,
Americans weren't.
no, we were
Yeah,
more about the upper body, and that. When I look back at my career now, you had to do it all over again. He would definitely do legs a lot more and a lot smarter than we did back then.
yeah. We'd all want to look like Sidney Crosby, right?
Yeah. Well, you
Yeah,
look at today's players and they all have massive legs and the hockey asses, which
yeah,
is
yeah. Exactly.
part of the reason why they can all skate.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to ask you about today's defensemen. When you look at these guys, Makar, Werenski, Darlene, Quinn Hughes, they're doing things on the ice that nobody in your era probably even would have thought about, right? But was
No.
Paul Coffey the closest to those guys that you've seen?
Paul was probably the closest, but the names you mentioned, and there's many more in the league today, they're such gifted skaters and their edge work in tight quarters and how they can skate their way out of trouble. Like Paul was just speed, and he was a great skater and effortless stride that two strides and he's gone and you weren't catching him. He was different than how the defenseman that you mentioned on how they skate, how they play today.
Yeah.
And the guys you mentioned, I love watching them play because of how they skate and that edge work that they do. And I'm in awe of how they do it. They just start training like that at such a young age now.
Yeah. And they do that like when they're skating with the puck and they're opening their hips up and they're doing these 2 and 10s and their feet, the things they
Yeah.
do with their feet is just incredible, right? Yeah.
Hey, the
It's
great
crazy.
equalizer to all that is hit them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Except you don't see hitting until the playoffs.
No, exactly. One last thing I want to ask you about, and my wife and I were up in Seattle over the winter, and we went to go see a Seattle Torrent game, and we didn't know what to expect. We just thought, let's go check it out.
Yeah.
What's her name was playing from Team USA, and
Hillary Knight, I think.
Hillary Knight. Yeah, so we wanted to go see it, and we were blown away at how much we enjoyed it. And
Yeah.
I posted some things about women's hockey, and I've had people say, I'd rather go watch a men's senior game. But you have to look at it for what it is, right? It's women's hockey. But we were blown away by the skill set and
Yeah.
not the speed, but the way they play the game is smart. And I wanted to bring that up because I know you coached the Buffalo Buttes to their
Yeah.
first inaugural season, Isabel Cup. How did that opportunity come about for you?
So the first year of the Butte's existence, Rick Sealing was a coach with Shelley Looney. And I knew Rick through the Sabres alumni, and I
Yep.
coached his son midget hockey with my son.
Okay.
Then Rick would come help me out whenever he was around or in town. So we've always had a good rapport and understanding of the game, and we kind of worked well together. So when Shelley left and Rick took over her duties, he called me up to ask me if I wanted to help out and get involved. And it was such a great experience. We did it for 3 years. Like you said, Rick was telling me from the first season how some of the players at the time, they didn't shoot the puck, they pushed the puck. So it wasn't like a shot, more of a
Oh, yeah.
push. And then as we saw here from year 2 to 3 to 4, the talent level kept getting better and better as these young kids were coming out of colleges. And at the time, the Olympic players, the U.S. Olympic players were playing in the league at the same time. So the league started getting better quicker every year. And like you said, the skill set the girls had was remarkable. And you could see that they, again, the same thing. They put the time and effort into it as little kids playing the game
Right.
and hone their skills, and they just kept getting better and better.
Yeah, I mean, you guys were kind of the groundbreaking for women's hockey and what the PWHL's done now, and they're growing. And where do you see that going? Do you see that growing even like I think they're adding 7 cities this year, maybe?
Yeah, they added quite a few. I'm not
Yeah.
sure how many they're at now. At the time, because at the time too, there was I forgot what they had a Canadian professional league too, where the Canadian Olympic players played, and
Okay.
then our league that had the Americans, and it was always kind of discussed how to get to the next level, and everybody kind of knew you can't have two competing
Yep.
pro leagues like that. You have to merge and have one, which where they're at now.
Yeah.
So you can see how it's advancing and advancing quicker than it ever has. I believe the end goal is to kind of mirror the WNBA, and that was always been a rumor that they would like the NHL to kind of use it as um, again their grassroots programs, because all the NHL teams are heavily involved in grassroots program,
Yeah.
female hockey. So I think that would be the ideal situation, is if the NHL teams eventually have their own female teams and
Yeah.
controlled
Yeah.
it, and
Yeah. But think
then
about it, a
you can
girl.
see the money grow too, and the
Yeah.
opportunities grow.
Exactly. Young girls have a chance to be a professional hockey player now where, when we were kids and there was a girl playing hockey, she was pretty much done at 16 and,
Yeah,
that was it. But they have now like you said, they work on these skill sets because they have a dream of playing professionally. So I think it's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's great for them to have an opportunity like that.
Yeah. Real quick, how difficult was the transition for you when your playing career ended? Like you did a lot, you played for a long time. Was there the what's next for you?
It wasn't that hard transition for me because I stayed in the game for 6 years.
Yeah.
So my first year when I was retired, my agent Rich Winter asked me to come on board with him and help him. So I did that for the first year till I kind of got my feet wet with that transition and figure out what I want to do. And then I got into doing pro scouting. I got hooked up with Rick Dudley when he was in Tampa and scouted there for 4 years, and then did the pro side of scouting. Then he went to the Panthers for a year, so I went there with him. And then the first lockout came after that season. And then that's when everybody was kind of trying to cut corners and save money. So I ended up getting out at that time and ended up working locally for a family owned developer here in town, Uniland Development.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I've been with this company here now for 22 years doing leasing and sales.
Oh, no kidding. All right. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So I've
great.
had
Yeah.
two career jobs, hockey and real estate, commercial real
Yeah,
estate.
and you're still going.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you said you
Keeps
still
me young.
skate. You still skate once a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Try
That's awesome. Yeah.
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 So
Yeah.
try to
Because
get some cardio in.
my buddy Brett Callahan, he's 71, I think, and he still skates at least once or twice a week. And that's what I love about these retired hockey guys. They just keep going.
Yeah. But you know what? I've always said after I retired, my body's going to tell me when it's time, and you'll know because of the aches and pain. Not that you can't do what you used to do, but everything just slows down. but
Yeah.
the aches and pains will tell you when it's time to hang them up.
Yeah. Yeah. When you look back at your career, Craig, what are you most proud of beyond those 3 Stanley Cups?
I don't think I could say one individual thing. I think it's pretty much the whole career, and again the opportunity to have that career. And there's so many people to thank for helping you along the way.
Yeah.
Again, when I was younger doing it, trying to figure this all out, there was no blueprint on how to get to the NHL.
Yeah.
And I remember when I might have been about 14 at the time, and I thank my dad for this because I don't even know if he realized what he was doing, but I was kind of on the verge of questioning if I want to still put that much time into playing hockey. And he took me to the Maple Leaf Garden to watch the Toronto Marlies play, which is in the major junior A circuit. And we're sitting in the front row right beside the penalty box. And we're watching the game, and it's fast, and they're big. And so I said to my dad, I said, "What league is this?" So he told me it was major junior A. He said, "So this is a league you would play in a couple years, and when you're in this league, this is the league the NHL draft players from to play in the
Yeah.
NHL."
Right.
And after a few minutes of watching the game, I turned to him and said, "I want to play in this league." But it was something that opened your eyes so you could see like a means to get there. Before that, it was like nobody really told you how to get there or what you had
Right.
to do.
And there's a
Not like
huge,
today.
yeah, there's a ton of paths today, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's crazy. Craig, my
yeah,
podcast is called Shift Change because every hockey player eventually reaches a point where the game changes for them, but the
yeah.
connection doesn't have to end. And you're a classic example of, life in hockey just keeps going and you're still doing it. I thank you for joining me and sharing your stories because your career connects with so many important chapters of hockey history. And, what stands out most is your longevity, adaptability, and the relationships you built are incredible. So I appreciate having you on today. And I'd like, next time in Buffalo, I'd love to meet you when we're in town.
Absolutely. Yeah. You got my number. Whenever you're in town, give me a call. We'll grab something. You can go.
All right. Sounds great, buddy.
Again, thanks for having me on. It was always a pleasure to talk to people about hockey and learn about other people and their stories as well.
Yeah, great. All right. Well, enjoy your evening. Thanks. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Thanks, Rich.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
Take care.